Very sorry about the very late start. We've been having a lot of problems which Shaz has managed to resolve single-handedly.
I don't think
with a little bit of help from our friends.
Yes.
Yeah. Can anybody type in anything to make so that we know that you can hear us?
We've got a hello. Yeah,
Can you get rid of
I
this?
can see and hear you. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm Kathy, IBD Nurse at Derriford, and this is...
Hi, I'm Jane, one of the volunteers.
And we've also got Shaz, but she can't fit on the screen. We've had a bit of a traumatic time trying to get on, so sorry about that.
Emma said all good.
You wanted to say a few things about things that were on, Shaz.
Oh yeah. The things that we've got coming up.
Yeah. Do you want to squeeze in and let them know?
Where's that keep going on? Hi everybody. Just to let you know a couple of things before we start the actual main thing. We've got a couple of things coming up in May. We've got May the 13th, I think it's Saturday, May the 13th, is our May Fair at Harewood House in Plympton. That's 10 till 3, so do come along and see us there. We're selling knitted characters and homemade jewellery, so it'll be absolutely wonderful. And on May the 26th, we're having, which is a Friday, we are having a quiz at the Staddy in Plymstock, but we haven't finalised the times and everything for that. It'll probably be around 7 or something.
Yeah.
But so don't forget to come along to that. And then in June we've got another coffee morning on June the 3rd, and we're also arranging some other things for later in the year, so don't forget to come along to those. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. On your phone you had 2 questions, Shaz.
Yeah, you're not
I haven't got, no.
I'll
So
find them.
we've got a few questions. Before we start, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for your lovely comments on my partial semi-retirement, reducing my hours, should I say. I was overwhelmed with them, genuinely I was. It was so absolutely lovely, and thank you for all of you that took the time to comment. Okay, so let's crack on. This is our first question. I have UC and IBS. If I get constipated, I end up flaring, which makes life unbearable. But if I use prescribed laxatives, I get tenesmus, which is a pain in the arse. Can I say that? No, excuse the pun. I'm on vedolizumab. This is managing my IBD well. Is there anything I can do? So
Who's that from?
That's from someone called Emma.
Emma. And she told us, I looked up what tenesmus was because I had
Shaz.
no idea.
Yeah. So tenesmus is the feeling that you need to open your bowels even though your bowel is empty or your rectum is empty, and it's a very, very common problem with IBD and indeed IBS as well, particularly with people that have distal colitis, so they have colitis in the lower bowel. It's very common to get constipated with a low level of inflammation in the lower bowel. The two go hand in hand, and people with distal or proctitis probably get the worst tenesmus and those difficult symptoms, especially if they're passing blood a lot. It is a very difficult one, the balance between laxatives and running to the toilet and passing blood and mucus. And it's something that was probably one of the most difficult things to manage, really. If the IBD is well controlled, then there should be a happy medium with the constipation side. I mean, you should be able to get to a point when you're going to the toilet normally. Not everybody, but most people will. And normally, if the laxatives are going the other way, which it seems from the email that it is, or it's very difficult symptoms, then it might just be a way of managing a lesser dose, but on a more regular basis. So often what people do is they wait till they get constipated and then they take shed loads of laxatives. And actually that just gives you an irritable bowel. So the best thing to do is take regular laxatives all the time if you need them. And the gentlest ones are movicol or laxedo. And also some of the, just extra fibre in your diet. Prunes are very good, kiwis are very good, equally as good probably as things like movicol and laxedo. Normally you can find a happy medium. So if you have a low dose regularly, you should be able to manage that better.
I love kiwi.
Do you like prune?
Not so much.
Oh,
I would say I'm having that problem myself at the moment, so that was good advice for me as well, because I do have the laxedo.
yeah.
But I don't find it really works.
No,
for me.
exactly. And with laxatives, I mean, the bowel is, as we know, a funny organ, and there's no one size fits all. So some people will find things like movicol, laxedo brilliant. Other people will say lactulose is really good, but a lot of people that use lactulose say they have the most terrible wind with it.
Oh.
So, you know, it is very much a trial and error, but there are really good over-the-counter things as well. And there's also, you know, ones, health food shops often mean, you know, husks, fibre gel, you know, they're not for everyone, but everybody's different. So it's a matter of finding the one that's right for you, really.
Yeah.
Another question. I'd like to ask why constipation, very similar actually, isn't
Yeah,
it?
funny, isn't it?
Isn't classed as a symptom for IBD. It seems many people suffer with small bowel Crohn's. I personally struggle, and then I have blockages. Okay, so
On the Crohn's and Colitis UK website, there is a, if you go into information, there is actually something on diarrhea and constipation is a PDF download that is worth having a look at.
Okay.
So it kind of is considered a bit of a what sort of symptom is the word.
So firstly, constipation can be classed as a symptom of IBD, but it wouldn't be a symptom on its own. So often people do get constipated, as I've just said with the distal colitis, that's very common. But constipation in itself isn't a symptom of IBD. People that get blockages with small bowel Crohn's, that's not due to constipation. So if you get blockages, then generally it's due to strictures. So if you've got narrowing in the bowel, or if you've had previous operations, or if you know that you've got strictures in the small bowel, that can make you constipated, but it's the strictures that will make you block. It's very, very, very rare to get a blockage just from constipation. Normally that can be, you know, managed conservatively. So yeah, so on the whole, small bowel Crohn's, if you've got strictures, then a lot of the time people do find that they do get constipated because they have to follow a very, very low residue diet because of the stricturing disease. And that can often cause the constipation, not the constipation itself being a particular feature. So, you know, that's very difficult, and we do find that people with small bowel stricturing Crohn's, you know, which is not a pleasant thing to live with, do have to follow quite strict low residue diets, and that does have a big knock-on effect with the rest of their bowel. So sometimes people do still need movicol, need lactulose and those kind of things to counter effect that type of thing. Sorry. As you can see, we're still having some technical problems. Oh dear.
I'm just getting those so I can read the comments.
Now let's have a look. Prunes and apricots.
Gwenny says prunes and apricots. Yeah, you can see the
Yeah.
now,
Oh,
Gwen.
and Gwenny's in your name is in lights. This issue of Crohn's and Colitis.
Gwenny's on the front of
Nice
our newsletter.
page. Oh, Lindsay, where are you tonight, Lindsay? We need
She
answers.
doesn't have a babysitter.
You don't have a babysitter.
She's still looking for a camera and microphone, aren't you, Lindsay?
Oh,
No, that was us.
come round with your dog, Lindsay.
Oh, Margaret said hello.
Yeah.
Oh, hello, Margaret.
And Hannah Matthews.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Anna. Okay, so a couple of other questions. Do
charge.
type in your questions if you have any.
Oh, Gemma.
Oh, hello, Gemma.
Hi, Gemma.
Thanks for your help earlier. Or should I say Alex?
Okay, I mean, this is quite a common one that we get asked. I've been told I have Crohn's and colitis. Is this possible? The short answer is no. So normally that tends to be biopsy related. So what will often happen is people will have an endoscopy or a colonoscopy, and they'll take some biopsies. The biopsies will come back in keeping with Crohn's or in keeping with colitis, but biopsies are never 100%. So they only give us a picture in time. They only give us an idea, really, if you like, most of the time. So what you'll often find is when people have said, oh, I've got colitis and then I've got Crohn's, they actually had Crohn's all along. The only way to really prove if you've got colitis or Crohn's is, generally speaking, is where your disease is. So if you have disease in your small bowel and you've got some disease in your colon, that will always be Crohn's, because you can't get Crohn's you can't get colitis in the small bowel. If you've only got disease in your colon, then that's where things can become a little bit more tricky, because you need a lot of biopsies to be 100% sure, and we only do colonoscopies on people every few years. We only take a few biopsies, so it's very difficult to be 100% sure. So you can't have them both together. What tends to happen is that people get given a diagnosis, and it's not always, completely 100% at that time. Right there, Chaz?
Yep. We've had hellos from Trudy, Vicky and Sharon.
Nice.
Yeah.
This is a more surgical related question. Thanks for sticking.
That's me.
Oh!
That's me encouraging people to write in.
I must admit, I looked at it and thought,
I thought, thanks for sticking this. Oh, Sharon Dumper. Hi, Sharon. Okay, I've had my bowel removed. Not me. I'm. This is a question. I've had my colon, should I say, removed for ulcerative colitis. I don't know whether to proceed to have a pouch or not, as I'm living with my bag with no problems. Have we got anyone on there that's got a permanent stoma who would like to comment on living with a permanent stoma? Have a think about it.
We are thinking of having a Facebook live stream just about stomas.
Yes, which
Good idea.
lovely Stacey Harper has agreed to do, our lead stoma nurse. It's a tricky one. Most people with colitis, are young on the whole who have colectomies, and most people want some time without a stoma if they can, get away with it. We would generally encourage people who have ulcerative colitis, and it is just ulcerative colitis. It's not for Crohn's.
Hannah calls her stoma Dewey.
Dewey.
After Mr. Dewey, I assume.
We assume. So most people for ulcerative colitis we will encourage them to have a pouch operation because it means a life without a stoma. But, we do have people all the time that say that they went through so much with their colitis, they went through so much having the surgery that they don't want another big operation. And it is a massive operation. So, you're talking 3 stages. The first to have your colon removed, the second to have the pouch made, the third to have your stoma reversed. So most of the time it's a year out of someone's life.
Yeah,
it's doesn't mean a year when you can't work, but you're going back to work, you're coming out, you're having time off, you're going back again, you're having more time off. And a lot of employers don't like that. I'm not sure what other people's experiences are with stomas. I know Hannah's had a lot of problems with employers and stuff like that being quite difficult, and everyone's different, I guess, and different employers are, some are very helpful, some aren't, but it's a big thing on your life.
Hannah does say it was a difficult decision, but I wouldn't change it now. I finally got a life.
Yes,
and it is named after Mr. Dewey.
And Hannah's is permanent, so that's a big thing, isn't it? I think there's a big difference between knowing you could have it reversed one day,
yes,
and absolutely knowing you can't.
Yes.
Kathy will tell you, but I wouldn't change it now. Yeah.
There's a lady called Lynn on. I'm not sure if she was the one who asked the question earlier on about the constipation.
Okay.
But I think she's only just come on. Lynn, if that's you, we did answer that question already, but we can briefly say again.
Which one was
the
the
constipation?
question?
The one about why is constipation not a symptom?
Oh.
Yeah, we were talking about the PDF.
Oh yes, we were saying that constipation on its own isn't a symptom. So, when you look at symptoms of Crohn's and colitis, they'll say diarrhoea, bleeding, weight loss, fatigue, anemia. You won't ever see constipation, you're right, but that doesn't mean it isn't a part of IBD, because it is. And people with colitis get constipation very commonly. And I think you said you had small bowel Crohn's. And we were just saying earlier on that the stricturing small bowel Crohn's is quite difficult because people need to follow a very low residue diet, and that's what makes them constipated. So they do need to take things like movicol, laxatives, sometimes lactulose to try and counter effect it. Yeah, it's difficult with people with small bowel Crohn's. They can't do that. That's the trouble. So if you've got stricturing and you have to have a low residue diet because things get stuck in your bowel, your only option is to have liquid. Yeah, exactly.
Is that why?
Yeah, it's to have a liquid laxative that will keep your bowel going. Yeah. So it is very difficult. That.
Just
Hannah
reading
said
the
she'd be
one
happy to
from
help out with a live on stoma.
Oh, lovely. Thank
That's
you,
cool.
Hannah. I'll ask, when I speak to Stacey, I'll ask her if she's happy to do one.
There's a question from Andrew. Can you see that one?
I was prescribed...
Omeprazole. I must admit, it's a different thing, but my mum was prescribed omeprazole. She has kidney problems, and they took her off the omeprazole because it wasn't good for that. And I can't remember what she's on now, but it's brilliant. So
there are lots of different ones, Andrew. There are so many of them. You're right in that group of drugs can sometimes increase diarrhoea. Shouldn't cause pain. I don't know why you had pain. I presume abdominal pain. If you still got acid reflux, two things there really. Try another one. There's loads of them. Ask your GP. I presume simple things like Gaviscon, and that hasn't worked. The other thing is that if it's not getting better and you've got Crohn's, you should have a gastroscopy, because sometimes you can have Crohn's of your gullet. It's rare, but if anyone that's sort of youngish and fit, who has got a history of Crohn's and you've never had a gastroscopy, that should be checked out, because you can get Crohn's, as you know, from the mouth to the anus.
Oh. Vicky has come up with a question. Oh, they all have these very complicated names in them. Sodium Docusate.
Yeah.
I always mispronounce them, and then Kathy says it right.
Oh, Andrew has small bowel.
So that's interesting. So it might be worth, Andrew, if you haven't ever had a gastroscopy and your acid reflux isn't getting better, then you probably do. We probably need to check you out. But I would probably try an alternative first if you've still got it. The reason they give you omeprazole is probably because it's just a bit cheaper than some of the others.
Yeah, Vicky says she's...
Vicky, sodium docusate to help with constipation. It's a constipation evening.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yuck, movicol. Movicol is vile, isn't it, to be fair?
Is it okay to take them every day?
Yes, it's fine to take them every day. I mean, this is what, we were saying before, is some people really do have a very difficult, irritable bowel on top of colitis.
Yes.
So if you've got...
Talked about that last time,
if you've got especially distal or proctitis, and your people have terrible symptoms, they're living on the loo, they're passing blood, they're passing mucus, they're going back all the time, but they're not going to the loo properly.
No.
So, some people have a very, very sluggish bowel, and it doesn't matter what they do, they will have a lot of constipation issues. So if it's just that you can't go, then increasing the movicol docusate every day is okay, and also increasing your fibres, in colitis, not for people with small bowel Crohn's, but in ulcerative colitis is absolutely fine. So, Dr. Hayward's very hot on all the fibres and increasing the fibres and the right fibres and all that kind of thing. So, but yes, you won't do yourself any harm by having laxatives. I mean, some people even eat things like Picolax to get them going.
Is that the
one you have for the camera?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh,
the lovely one.
Yeah, they have terrible problems. So,
Surely not.
I love that one.
Nicola Blackwell. Hi, Nick. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Nikki. How are you these days? And Daniel White. So, do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about anything particular? We're not got any obvious questions at the moment. No Picolax.
That's Gemma.
Yes, Gemma, we agree with that.
Gemma, when you're an old pro like me, I'll point out Gemma's my daughter. I've suffered from UC since I was diagnosed at 3. Obviously, Gemma's grown up with me taking Picolax and causing a big scene about taking Picolax.
It's not nice, is it?
It's horrible. I stamp my feet.
Do you think clean prep's any worse? Better?
No, they're all horrible.
They're all vile, aren't they?
But yeah, Gemma has been diagnosed a year ago with Crohn's at 40. So yeah, she's not had as much experience of Picolax as I have.
Oh, and it's better these days, Gemma.
It's so
everything's so much more.
No, it's not.
No, I don't mean the colonoscopies. I mean, like in your day, people weren't even believed half the time, were they?
No,
I know that does still happen, but when you hear the stories of people that tried to get a diagnosis from 20, 30 years ago, it really is awful, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we had it with my younger daughter. She's 22. She has UC. she was diagnosed at 2.5. She presented symptoms from birth, and the GP just said I was an over-anxious mother, that there was no way she had colitis, even though she presented exactly the same as me, you know, and even though that I have it, I wasn't believed.
And you'd think, wouldn't you, with a family history, that would be give you more, because you would always have like a degree of caution if you knew it was a family history.
Yeah, exactly.
You know. I mean,
but there's still problems with diagnosis, because one of the campaigns by Crohn's and colitis is
definitely
is to get diagnosis earlier.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's still surprisingly happening even today.
And I mean, and the worst things that happen, I think, are the young women being, who are labelled still with having an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And that still happens, even though they have small bowel Crohn's, and
bad, isn't it?
dreadful, because it has such a huge psychological impact on people.
Yeah.
For many years.
Question from Jason.
Hi, my wife has recently been diagnosed. Oh, and one of the key indicators was experiencing severe joint pain. Yeah, so there's a link with IBD and joint pain, as there are with lots of things with IBD, skin conditions, eye conditions. There's lots of what we call extra-intestinal manifestations of IBD. And what comes first is very chicken and egg. Some people will present with dreadful joints, and they will end up having inflammatory arthritis, like rheumatoid, etc. And then they will have IBD diagnosed at the same time. Other people have IBD diagnosed, and they have very bad aching joints with it, which is different to having inflammation in your joints. So if you've got bad joint pain, you need assessment by a rheumatologist. A lot of people will have their joints scanned. They won't have inflammation in their joints. They won't have a degenerative joint problem, but they do say when their IBD is active, they have very, very bad aching joints. But that's different from having an inflammatory arthropathy that needs to be properly assessed. So if your wife's still got bad joints, I would definitely recommend her seeing a rheumatologist as well.
Lynn has asked, is it hereditary then? I guess because of what you were saying,
what
Jane.
I was saying.
I mean, it
can
be, but not in mine.
We can't say it's not genetic. So there's a genetic link, but we can't say 100% it's genetic. So diseases like cystic fibrosis, when you can track genetic, link, and you can say if you're a carrier and you're a carrier, you will be a carrier, you will have it. It's not like that. They've not. I think we mentioned this couple of...
We have, but people are often asked it.
Yeah. So you can't isolate. Well, they have isolated a gene with Crohn's disease, but it's only 30% of people who have it. So even then, you can't say, I will carry it, you will carry it, you will have it. It doesn't work like that. What we tend to say is that there's a familial link, or there can be a familial link. So like Jane was just saying, if someone comes to you and their son or daughter has these symptoms, then you should have a high index of suspicion that they may have that. Not always, but we can't say it's purely, we can't call it a genetic disease.
No.
I mean, I've been told when obviously my youngest was diagnosed, she's from my second marriage, and I was told that it was myself and my partner together, something to do with our genes and everything as to why she presented. But then my middle daughter, a few years later, was diagnosed with lupus.
And
then
that's
the eldest, with the Crohn's. So then recently, someone said it's just autoimmune. You've all got autoimmune.
Yeah, and that links in with this question here. I have Angstbond as well. It seems you get one and then you pick up more, and that's very true. I think that you do see people with unfortunately 1, 2 or 3 of these types of things.
Gwenny's got leukemia, hasn't she, as well?
So it's sad, but it's true that if you have that genetic preponderance to those types of diseases, people have psoriasis as well. They have Crohn's and terrible psoriasis.
Yes. But nobody else in our family has Crohn's and colitis except me and my children.
Yeah, exactly.
My sister.
No, and your mum and dad never.
Mum and
so
dad.
that's why we can't.
No,
that's right.
Not
my
one
dad.
person. Kids,
my dad
parents,
does have
sisters.
really bad psoriasis and arthritis. So we think he's
the link.
And don't let him forget it.
Shame. Your poor dad.
There's quite a few people come with James, Shelley.
Nice
Jeanette,
to see lots of people.
saying hello. Yeah.
We could, as we're on a constipation vein, and a diet vein, I can mention that we do, or I mean nothing to do with constipation, really, just diet. We do now have our new dietitians up and running. Yeah, she's only part-time, but she's extremely experienced.
Is this instead of Lucy?
Yes, Lucy's
Right.
gone. So she does 2.5 days a week. So, and at the moment,
What's her name?
Paula.
Paula.
At the moment, we're going to get her to see people with, very, very difficult Crohn's of the small bowel, people that are really, really struggling to put on weight, that have a lot of that are malnourished, that have vitamin deficiencies.
Yeah.
But hopefully, as time goes on, we may be able to get her to do more hours, and she'll be able to see more of the general population of the IBD. Because we know that we get lots and lots of calls or emails asking for dietetic input.
Yeah.
And it's quite it's a minefield really, because no one size fits all.
No, definitely not. Some things I can eat, my daughter can't, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Quite often my mum will shout at me and say, "How can she be eating that, Jane? Don't let her eat that. That makes you really poorly." And I said, "But Mum, Emily's fine."
Yeah, that's
So
right, and it is trial and error. And
yeah.
and years ago there used to be, and even now actually, people often tell me that they're googling ulcerative colitis particularly, and being told to follow a low residue diet. And as we've just said, there's a big proportion of people that will get constipation. So nowadays we say eat a balanced normal diet if you've got UC, and you will find out which things will trigger things for you, but don't cut out all fibres because they're so important.
Yeah,
We all need
exactly.
some kind of fibres.
Yeah. I find that diet doesn't trigger it, but if I'm having a flare, then I have to be careful what I'm eating. So I'm all right normally to eat tomatoes and onions, but if I have a flare, tomatoes and onions straight out the window.
I find dairy will trigger it.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And we do say that to people when they're acutely unwell. If you've got a very bad flare of colitis or Crohn's, and you're on the toilet constantly, then reduce your fibre at that time.
Yeah.
But don't, because what happens is that people then reduce fibre. I spoke to someone recently on the phone, bless him, 10 years ago he'd been told to have a low residue diet. 10 years ago for ulcerative colitis. He hadn't eaten anything nice since.
Oh, no.
He'd had no... and he was constipated, really constipated. And following this really rigid diet. And there's nothing that says anywhere that you can't have fruit, veg. You just have to... do what's right for you, really. So people are still getting those messages to eat no fibre at all.
Yeah.
It's mental, isn't it? Jennifer said, I find me and my husband, what he can eat, I can't, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And then she comes back later on and says, I miss popcorn more than anything.
Oh.
Yeah, popcorn's nice.
Maybe, Jenny, have you got a stoma? Is that why you can't eat it? Because that's a big no-no with stomas.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
Or even small bowel Crohn's.
Yeah.
Shelley says she likes smoothies. Smoothies are very
Smoothies
good.
are brilliant, and they're a good way of getting your 5 a day in, and most people, not
Yes.
everyone, but a lot of people will be able to tolerate those. And Nicholas said, can having Crohn's make you put weight on?
If you're taking steroids, I think.
I feel like I'm getting bigger. I don't think you need to worry, Nikki. She's only little. But in answer to your question, no, it can't make you put on weight. But what can often happen is when people have been ill for a long, long time, and you see this a lot with infliximab, anti-TNF treatment, they get used to having very little to eat. And they get used to being very thin because they're unwell.
Yeah.
When you go into remission, people then put on weight and then they're like, oh my God, I've put all this weight on. And you're right, steroids can be a big trigger for that.
Yeah.
But even being well can.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No,
I don't. It just really doesn't agree with me. Oh, shame.
Vicky says, Dr. Hayward told me kiwis are great for constipation. I can confirm
They work a treat.
Really?
Kiwis are brilliant. They're fantastic.
How many would you need to eat?
Well, not too many.
One.
They're quite
a day.
sharp. They're lovely,
Really?
but they're quite sharp, aren't they? I mean, if you put them in a fruit salad, then it's not all sharp, so it's good. That's a good mix then as well.
Yeah.
He's a big. He loves kiwis and prunes.
Does he?
Yeah.
And you keep the prunes.
He comes into the office each morning with his green, I can't really say it on air, but I have to because it looks revolting. I've got my extra strong coffee, and he's got
It's a smoothie.
green-looking slush.
Sludge buzz on it.
Yeah. But he's a big fan of all things fruit, veg, and probiotics and prebiotics, and I love a good kiwi.
Jennifer says she did have a bag but had it reversed.
Oh.
And Lindsay said earlier on that
Yes,
she's had a
yes.
bag for 8 years, but she's looking forward to it being reversed.
Yeah, I think most people do want to get it reversed. I mean, I think it's always really nice to think that you don't have to have the bag.
Yeah.
I think that if people...
But it can be a life changer.
Yeah, and also I think a lot of people look back to how ill they were, and they just think, I don't ever want to go back to that again. So the comparison, and when you think some symptoms of Crohn's and colitis are incontinence, having to wear pads when you're young, or leakage. I mean, that is still worse in many ways than having a stoma that works.
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. Yeah. Oh, Hannah Darrigan's on. Hi, Hannah.
How are you, Hannah?
She loves a good kiwi.
And you save a fortune on toilet roll. This is a very good point.
Yes.
Stoma.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I never thought of that. Yeah. Sharon, that's interesting. I don't want my stoma reversed. Yeah, and I mean, Sharon, you were so unwell, weren't you? So unwell. So it just goes to show there can be a lot of
Horses for courses, isn't it?
Absolutely. And when we, if Stacey is happy to do the next one, then she can go through stomas in a bit more detail, because there's lots to know.
Yeah.
There's lots to find out about stomas.
Yeah.
So so is that
Well,
about?
we haven't. Oh,
It is.
What time did we start?
Yes.
1:45, didn't
Yes,
we?
we did.
So we are late
Yes,
anyway.
we've just about come to.
So
the
let us know if anybody would find the one on stomas helpful.
Yes.
You can. But can they type in after this?
Yeah. We'll still see it. Yeah.
I'm sure if we advertise it as a stoma one.
Yeah, which we did the last time we did one,
Yeah.
but it's a long time ago. And the last one we did, I think, must have been about 5 years ago now. I think
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was a long time ago. So.
Yeah, it was a while, wasn't it?
So.
And maybe another diety kind of one we did before. That was
Yeah.
another one that people were interested in, but it might be tricky with if Paula's only part time.
Yeah, and she's only doing 2 days.
Yeah.
And she's just started in post, so it's a bit early, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well
sorry.
done, ladies.
See you soon.
I started in Browdy today. Oh, brilliant! Fantastic, lovely.
Onwards and upwards.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it'll help for you.
Yeah.
Half an hour did go quick, didn't it?
It did, didn't it?
And,
We said that before. Yeah,
I
really
just want
sorry
to chip
about
in
the
with
start.
the old coffee mornings.
Oh yeah.
Come along. And they're not just for us sufferers, they're for family, friends, anybody that supports anybody with the old rubbishy old disease that we all have.
Do you get
The
many-
two
do
we've
you
had
get
so
many,
far,
relatives
we've
going?
had new people come. Well, last time
Yeah.
we had a lady and her mum came along,
nice.
and she'd
Yeah.
not sort of a year ago been diagnosed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was great because we could tell her stuff that
Yeah.
she didn't know.
And it's
It was
nice to
really
talk to different people with different symptoms.
Yeah.
As you heard, my life story. But, I've been through all different things. I'm happy to chat to anybody.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a good support, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
people,
I've met
yeah.
people that, have gone through different stuff. And it's just nice to talk to somebody who knows how you feel and how perhaps you feel supporting somebody as well.
So our next one is
Absolutely.
Saturday, June the 3rd.
Yes, it's
Where
June the
is it?
3rd.
It's Costa, no,
Yep, Costa at Marsh Mills, but it's the one.
near Wren's Kitchen.
Yes,
Yes.
Is there 2 at Marshmallows now?
yes.
There's about 4, I think.
there?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's ones
one
in
Next, and there's,
yeah.
they seem to be all over the place, but yes.
But the ladies are lovely in there, and they clear us a space, and come
Oh,
along.
Hannah says it's nice to have coffee mornings. That's such a great thing to bring back. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
I
Because
think
it's isolating.
I mean, it's all
I
very
agree,
well
it's an
speaking to
isolating disease.
and speaking to professionals is one thing, but
Yeah.
it really isn't anything like having it yourself,
Yes.
is it? Like, so
No,
I
that's
think
right.
that does people to get an enormous
Yeah.
amount out of that.
Yes, yeah. We are actually going to do a coffee morning in Cornwall, probably in July.
Yeah.
Gwenny asked us, could we do one over in Cornwall?
Ah.
Which we haven't been, and we're thinking of going to a place called Strawberry Fields in
Yes.
Lifton.
Oh, that's lovely.
So yes, and people have told us it's lovely. So we thought that
I
would
thought
be
Lifton
nice.
was in Devon.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, I'm sure. Gwenny said it was near Launceston.
Launceston.
It's not that far.
Oh, okay.
And
Anyway,
it's lovely there. The
It's-
coffee
yes.
there is so nice.
right.
And also, if I may say, that the what are those cakes with the icing on the top? White icing with the
Bakewell tart.
no. They're like
Chelsea. No, not
Yes.
Belgian bun.
Belgian.
Belgian bun.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had a Belgian bun as nice as there. Honestly. They are, and they're like,
Talking of a balanced diet.
don't tell Dr. Hayward, they're like this big.
Oh, Jennifer says about it can be lonely, but her husband was diagnosed last year. See, that's not hereditary.
No,
That's-
how
but
miserable.
what a shame.
But like
That's
you
what
will,
his diagnosis is.
that will give more support
That's
because
what
you'll
he's-
realise.
yeah.
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 Well, Gwenny says great. Yes.
Aw. Oh, Strawberry Fields is gorgeous. It's really
Yeah.
nice. Definitely do it there.
Yes. Yeah, we
We
definitely
will.
But it'll probably be July because we've got stuff already up till
Yeah.
June.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it might
Belgian
be the end.
buns, everyone.
We'll
Yes,
be there for a Belgian bun.
buns, yes. Okay.
Lovely.
Lined up then.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
Nice to hear you.
Yes.
Nice to
Yeah.
see
We'll
and
Try
hear you.
and- next
Thanks
time
for
we
joining
really
us.
will
We
try
really
and
will
start on
try.
time.
We'll start preparing at 6 o'clock. We'll get on
Well,
air.
me and Shaz got here at 7. It was like half.
Still didn't get it ready in time. So sorry about that.
See you all later.
Yeah, see you
Take
next
care,
time.
everyone.
Bye. Bye.